conditional. We can kick DAs or not go for T. Also, perms have to just spad and they have to go for them in the 2AR if we go for the counter plan. We don't deny them any arguments. They just get fast. They make these strategies arguments. We don't deny them any arguments. They just get fast. We solve the effect of this argument of encouraging to strategic thinking. They make these types of arguments, but we force after strategic thinking and also classify the effects of that from above. They make the education claims about consolidating the block and the 2NRs. All this plus stuff that research is the same, so there's no effect of this argument. They make these arguments that we could have read one dispositional, but dispositionality is bad. Makes people avoid permutations, and the arguments and also doesn't solve because all the arguments link because the app can stick. The neg with it also kills half the education because it makes debates about straight turns and a plan versus counter plan. That was critique, so not the counter plan. The Abbott and Gardner evidence indicates that simply involving NGOs and civil society to use as consultative mechanisms for the aims of state are not effective in leveraging full potential of civil society stakeholders. Direct participation is necessary for civil society to induce underpinnings of situations rather than having the state cherry pick which conclusions fit states' objectives. As this evidence characterizes NGOs as the voices of the weak and powerless that would be papered over under a state-centered system that they fall into line with what the state objectives were. In the case of the app, implementing environmental governments can be done just as well by association of NGOs. That's the first piece of evidence contextualizes by talking about how in the past, how in the past the GCF was not functional because of government divisions and government authority over the organization. If it only was an assemblage of direct participant NGOs, it would solve the consensus process. The economic domain would be the same. There's no reason why the NGOs cannot provide the technology that's needed to solve for biodiversity and global warming, even if the state is corrupt by itself, because the same incentives still make things like solar power able to function in Egypt as an internal link to solving warming and biodiversity. Even if corruption still exists, doesn't reverse the gains made by these NGOs. They make these perm arguments first. Perm do both links to the net benefit because it involves a state-centric approach that links to our liberalism claims. Next is proved to the confidence efforts because it bypasses the ethics voting issue because it's unpredictable. It can't predict which part of the play that they'll suffer off, and they make these arguments that we don't solve corruption in Egypt, I guess I'll answer, group the corruption claims. I'll answer all of them here. First of all, this piece of Warden evidence that says that it only says that in the past corruption has led to environmental mismanagement. The counterclaim can overcome these hurdles. Word for word, here's the Abbott and Gardner evidence. Expanding civil society participation holds the key to reconciling the competing visions of GSET that currently divide governments. This means the conditions that make governments corrupt impossible resolved by the counterclaim because it doesn't involve a state-centered approach. Also, the counterclaim will be able to mobilize public and private resources, connecting financially with results in empowering controllable actors for policymaking. That's the first piece of about Gardner evidence. The next piece of evidence in the 1AC that talks about corruption is a win-for evidence. It only indicates the correlation between government corruption and environmental degradation. It's not a reverse causal claim that concludes after just a descriptive statement that when there's been instances of high corruption, there have also been instances of worse environments. The evidence to be in the 2AC are all very generic. They're not in the context of environmental policy. They're just talking about how corruption is bad because it makes public goods harder to deliver. It assumes that one NGO is acting, not that multiple NGOs are acting, or that multiple NGOs have formed a sort of council, and so they have the same checks on each other as a government would have. It's just not a state-centered approach that only has one objective, or one vision of what is right for the environment. And then they make these, then they extend their barrack evidence, or they make the arguments that we don't have any evidence that says that NGOs are capable of solving. The Gardner evidence indicates that if NGOs consult, if they're simply not consulted, but if they were to consult each other, they would come up with the environmental solutions necessary. They said the NGOs can solve centralization, but there's no reason why the NGOs cannot also solve this. Also, the counterplan isn't linked to net benefit because the critique of liberalism is the reason why state action is bad, and it's not really much a geography argument as much as a reason for why the state is the reason why state continues liberalism. It continues liberalism in this human planetary mission. As having NGOs together. Oh.
One point, go to answer into that before you finish.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. And then NGOs wouldn't link to that because they don't involve the same sort of one objective, disregard any opinions or disregard any perspectives. They make arguments when self-biodiversity integration of local perspectives is crucial to effective biodiversity policies. Valley 7, effective biodiversity conservation relies on integrating local participation in land use planning. For example, co-management of forest watersheds, wetlands, coastal areas, agricultural ranges, fisheries, migratory bird habits, and the counterplan creates the infrastructure necessary to solve the AF about Gardner 11. The NGOs take part in all major national conferences and active civil society and put environmental financing and policies like GDP funds, critical health processes involving development transitional and constraints, using costs for public development, design application evaluation, including single participation, appropriate, but with implementing agencies for retain all decision-making authority. They make these arguments about the state solving our impacts, but the expansion of the liberal project causes extinction. Liberalism tasks itself with removing evil from the rest of the world, necessitates
It causes war and violence.
Okay, it causes war and violence. That's Bell and Evans evidence. It threatens to smooth the function of the liberal order. It threatens anything else that might threaten that, like the opinion of NGOs, and its triad tying all their aid to liberal government insurance policy failure to duck pay 2K2. The government responded to the local government aid policy proposal and frustrated by actual development that discussions have extreme policies that the result is by agency ready for packaging in counter with different forms of bill and time across willingness to negotiate contrasting versions of will and the parties that can establish their own moral identities. Go to the anthem okay for a second. For a perm duly also severance because it doesn't do the plaintiff's voting issue because it kills an egg and also perm duly
That's it.
okay, well that's it then.
Private actor fiat.
Oh yeah, sorry. Private actor fiat is fine because of NGO education. I don't think support mechanisms to an opportunity to debate about the counterpoint also statism. The belief in the government is more predictable in the reading of the assumption nobody has any power to act by into the assumption lets the applicant denies agency of individuals. Also, lit checks or evidence indicates it's predictable. Affiliate also we had a solvency ethics that compares NGO management of the government to state management, and they've read cards about why state actually does the reason why you should reject the team.
What was the no solvency argument you extended on the counterclaim? Why the app doesn't solve?
It was just that the app doesn't solve as well as the counterclaim because NGOs are more effective.
That wasn't your thing. Okay.
At the top of it, or
Somebody's in Brett, please.